Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 7 just showed us with Chapter 7 that there are levels to this, and whatever level a character thinks they're at, Boruto's just levels ahead of them, playing on God mode, which is exactly what Mitsuki found out in this chapter when he fought Boruto, because Boruto basically pulled a Sukuna to Mitsuki's Jogo and told that boy to stand proud. Jokes aside though, Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 7 has shifted the story yet again and dropped a few truth bombs that are going to shake things up and leave long-lasting effects, but you might have missed or overlooked them due to how much of the chapter was centered around Boruto flexing on Mitsuki during their fight. We open up the chapter where the last one left off. Mitsuki is rushing towards Boruto for the fight, but as he's doing so, we're given a glimpse into Mitsuki's psyche, and it gives us some much needed development for Mitsuki's character by building on what was already pre-established with the character itself. Mitsuki says that he is the moon that exists in the darkness, and like the moon in real life, the moon doesn't give off its own light, but instead it must shine based off of the reflected light from the sun. Ever since Kishimoto drew the Mitsuki one-shot manga back in 2016, Mitsuki has been in search of the sun to his moon as he goes through the various stages of discovering his own humanity as the clone son of Orochimaru, with Mitsuki being guided to that sun by the files that Orochimaru allowed him to take, which had Boruto's photo on them. Mitsuki is shown deep in thought, staring at the back of Kawaki, and it's poetic that he's staring at Kawaki from behind, in the shadow of the person who Mitsuki believes is supposed to shine light on him, and that's the reason it's poetic due to how it's paneled, because we go from Mitsuki looking at Kawaki's back, from his shadow, to Mitsuki rushing forward towards Boruto, the person who is really his son and is trying to shine light into the darkness that Kawaki has casted over the world by using omnipotence and framing Boruto for the murder of Naruto. What we're seeing here is both symbolic in terms of representation of Mitsuki's dynamic with Boruto and Kawaki, but we're also seeing the seeds being planted of Mitsuki coming to the realization that perhaps he's wrong in his heart, but he isn't able to see through the funk of omnipotence just yet, and as we'll learn later on, he's never gonna fully see past it as long as omnipotence is in effect. However, as Mitsuki rushes Boruto, we see Boruto's already begun thinking how he wants to handle the battle, and despite his words at the end of the last chapter where he talked of getting rough with Mitsuki, Boruto is giving Mitsuki the opportunity to see reason before he uses force. Boruto throws two shuriken in the direction of Mitsuki, and after they lodge themselves into the tree, Boruto diverts Mitsuki's attention away from the shuriken by not using them right away, but instead Boruto begins dodging Mitsuki's chakra snakes, and at one point he's almost wrapped up in one of them, and Boruto manages to slip away at the last second by using his god-given natural speed. Just when it looks like one of Mitsuki's chakra snakes are about to hit him, Boruto makes the hand seal for the flying Raijin, and he teleports away to one of the shuriken he threw, and due to how he's maneuvering Mitsuki the entire time, Boruto's now positioned himself directly behind Mitsuki, but instead of taking the time to end the fight with one blow, Boruto declines and chooses to gather more intel, which is another sign of the maturation and growth of Boruto's character. He's no longer just reacting and charging head on in the fight and winging the plan using his natural genius. He's staying more composed and he's thinking a few steps ahead. With shuriken in the tree, we can see the natural gleam on the shuriken that you normally see, where there's a contrast in the specs with the soft shading with the dark shading to give it that glossy, shiny appearance. Based on what Boruto's done so far, it appears as if he's already mastered key elements of the flying Raijin, despite him humbly saying he's not as good at it as his grandfather. The jutsu can be performed one of two ways, either by the first method of the user touching a person to teleport, or they place a seal on them or an object, or you have the second method, which is the user's chakra being connected to the object or person they want to teleport to. The smart money is on Boruto marking his weapons, because the second method is more advanced use of the jutsu, but the big thing here is that Boruto came back to Konoha with multiple ways to use the jutsu, and he's showing Mitsuki that had he wanted to, he could have ended the fight right there, but he has no aggression in his heart towards Mitsuki, which is going to be important. It's Boruto's way of trying to show him, if I am the monster that you think I am, then why did I save the village from Code? And why didn't I just take you down right there when I had the chance to do so? Why am I asking you questions about Kawaki instead of just fighting you? Am I really the monster, or maybe do you have the wrong idea about me? However, while Mitsuki doubles down on his intention to fight Boruto, Shikamaru brings Boruto and us as the audience up to speed about what really happened, and it's a lot more lore that we can file away on the Otsutsuki clan. Mitsuki specifically poisoned Kawaki so as to prevent him from entering into his Otsutsuki transformation, and Mitsuki is attempting to do the same thing to Boruto. Now, I can already see a few people looking at this and saying this is a plot hole, this makes no sense, but it really isn't. There was never anything that told us that this wouldn't affect Otsutsuki, and in Boruto Naruto Next Generation's anime, in the arc that Kishimoto wrote the story points for, the time slip arc, we saw that poison was a thing that works on Otsutsuki and affects their bodies. I personally don't take this as being a bad set of writing. If poison can affect Otsutsuki, then it makes sense that their vessels should be affected as well. It's a bit convenient that it prevents them from transforming, but it's also convenient that the Karma Seal has multiple stages to it in terms of the power it can draw out, which we learned when Boruto fought Code in part 1. And Code said, hey, you're not using Karma correctly, and then all of a sudden we get True Essence Boruto shortly after. What we're seeing here is that Mitsuki clearly didn't rush into combat without a plan in place. And if anything, he's been plotting on how to fight Boruto for the last 3 years. And this method makes sense because it's a ninja method. It is using deception. In Mitsuki's mind, Boruto is somebody that would not see through deception because his memories of Boruto and Kawaki are switched, and as we saw, Kawaki has no regard for the way of the shinobi. Had Mitsuki's snakes bitten into Boruto, and if Boruto ever tried to use karma, which in Mitsuki's mind he would be relying on, he wouldn't be able to do so. Chalk up points on the table for Orochimaru's clone, keeping the ninja elements alive in the series. Mitsuki knows deep down in his heart the truth. There is a gap between himself and Boruto. The gap is as large as the distance between the goalposts on an American football field. It's attainable to reach, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there. Mitsuki knows he is fighting someone who's strong enough to take down Code with ease, and he knows that it's something that not even Kawaki can do. Now, this might rub Kawaki fans the wrong way, but it actually makes a lot of sense. We've been saying since the start of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex that Kawaki appears to have suffered the same fate that Naruto did between the end of Naruto chapter 699 and Naruto chapter 710, which that's the Shin Uchiha arc. He grew stronger, but his combat senses got rusty, and getting rusty held him back. Kawaki said himself that when he saw Code was damaged by Boruto, he said he could probably kill him. He wasn't 100% certain, but it was more probable than not. But given that he was getting tagged by the Claw Grinds, granted one of them had the Rinnegan, but we saw that he was forced to use the Karma Seal and Ninja Tech inside of his body to fire out Chakra Blast and use Ninja Tech to take down some of the Claw Grinds. We saw that his guard was lowered enough that Mitsuki was able to knock him unconscious. If we go back 3 years ago in the timeline, Mitsuki never would have gotten that close because Kawaki's senses were a lot sharper. By comparison, even when Boruto fought against the evolved Shinju, he never resulted to using Karma. The story has been building up to Mitsuki's belief that Boruto might be stronger, and thus it makes Boruto a true threat to Kawaki, which simultaneously makes this battle of Mitsuki versus Boruto have the stakes raised because Mitsuki is fighting to protect his false son in a battle with his true son, all while the light shining from Boruto is slowly shining through the dark fog that has clouded Mitsuki's eyes. It's then that we see a rather creative attack pattern by Mitsuki where Mitsuki shoots out 6 snakes at Boruto, but in typical ninja trickery, the snakes transform into shadow clones, and each of these clones starts shooting off chakra snakes at Boruto. But Boruto, being the genius that he is, he quickly adjusts to the sight of the shadow clones by putting distance between himself and Mitsuki, and as the battle with the Mitsuki clones begin to damage the environment, Boruto has a very chilling line that should grab your attention as a reader, and I want to bring your attention to that. As he's avoiding Mitsuki's attacks, he tells Mitsuki in response to him saying that Boruto should just disappear from this world, Boruto says he can't die yet, and he can't afford to lose in Konoha right now. It's a similar stance to what he took with Kawaki when Kawaki said he would kill Boruto inside of Konoha, and Boruto said dying in Konoha is ideal, but that time isn't now. Seeds are being planted here for something darker with Boruto's fate, or it could be a red herring, and I'll say this, the narrative is doing a good job of not telegraphing which it's going to be by burying it inside the action, where we see Boruto grabbing his sword and quickly run lightning release through it as he takes down the Mitsuki clones, but Mitsuki then takes the opportunity of all the smoke that's been created from the destruction of the clones to begin weaving hand seals so lightning release jutsu, but unfortunately for Mitsuki, Boruto is beginning the same process and he counters Mitsuki's snake lightning jutsu with his own thunderclap arrow, and the two jutsu cancel each other out, and that's really poetic. Boruto hasn't seen Mitsuki in 3 years, but years of going to the academy with him. and fighting in battles alongside Mitsuki as a Ganin, it's allowed him to know the jutsu that Mitsuki will use before Mitsuki can even do so. Another seed planted in Mitsuki's mind that Boruto knows Mitsuki in ways that a stranger should not, all while confirming for us that Boruto doesn't have the malicious intent, because had he had true malicious intent, a genius like Boruto could have easily countered with a wind release jutsu, which is naturally strong against lightning release, but he didn't. Boruto is making it as plain as day. He's fully annoyed with fighting Mitsuki, but he isn't trying to end the fight using aggression, but instead he's trying to reach him through compassion and mercy, which ends up being what happens here. Boruto takes advantage of the smoke created in the explosion to draw his sword and place the blade at Mitsuki's throat, making it clear if he wanted to, he could have cut his head off, and Mitsuki then surrenders, telling Boruto to go ahead and kill him, stop wasting time. But Boruto doesn't do so because he's making it clear his intention wasn't to kill Mitsuki. Boruto takes the time to speak to Mitsuki, basically telling him to search his heart because the battle should have shown him the truth, that through exchanging fists, it should have shown him that Boruto doesn't want to kill him and that Mitsuki is wrong about this whole situation. And Ino and Shikamaru right now, right away, they know that this is Boruto attempting to connect with Mitsuki through the concept introduced in Naruto's manga way back in part 1, that a fight between two high-level shinobi, it can result in communication through fists and not having words exchanged. Yet, as Ino says, it's a dangerous method to take that approach. But Boruto holds steady, telling Mitsuki that he can shine on his own and that if he really needs a son, that son isn't Kawaki, that son is Boruto. Seeing Boruto sheath his sword and refuse to engage further with Mitsuki in combat, it throws Mitsuki for a loop, as does Boruto, telling him that he's now Mitsuki's son, and when Mitsuki snakes wrap around Boruto, he's further baffled by Boruto no longer attempting to escape, but instead Boruto holds firm, telling Mitsuki that he knows in his own heart that Kawaki isn't his son, and we see that Mitsuki is beginning to see more seeds of doubt that are blossoming, and it goes back to what we saw in chapter 1, where Mitsuki is openly questioning if the cold-natured Kawaki was still the son to Mitsuki's moon. Boruto is behaving more like a light of a sun lighting the path forward for Mitsuki than Kawaki likely did during those 3 years. And you can see the wheels turning in Mitsuki's head and the doubt creeping in, and Boruto basically gives him the talk no jutsu treatment, telling him, search your own heart, come to your own conclusions, which shows that Boruto understands the same thing that Ada told to Sumire and to Sarda in chapter 1. People affected by the omnipotence have to come to their own conclusions about the truth, because you're never going to rewrite their memories. That's not going to happen. And you're not going to change their perception of what they perceive to be the truth on their own. It's something they have to reach through on their own. And it gets worse based on what Boruto's saying here. After he tells Mitsuki that despite Kawaki waiting to kill him, Boruto has no intention of killing Kawaki, and he states that despite what Mitsuki's been told, Naruto's still alive and so is Boruto's mother Hinata. Boruto leaves Mitsuki with a nugget of information, saying that he needs to ask himself if he truly needs a son to shine, or can he do it on his own, and if he does need one, Boruto will be there to help him. With that, Boruto leaves to speak with Ino and Shikamaru away from Mitsuki's prying eyes, so as to prevent Mitsuki from figuring out the truth about Boruto's alliance, and staying in line with something that we saw in earlier chapters, where when Kawaki was in the Hokage office, the first thing he started asking was, did somebody from the surveillance team contact Boruto? So Kawaki's already suspicious there. Just another seed that has been planted that we don't know if it's going to bear fruit later on. Meanwhile, as Kawaki wakes up super pissed off, demanding to know where Mitsuki is, Boruto spills the beans to what happened when he speaks to Shikamaru. He basically says Ada unwittingly casted omnipotence to alter everyone's memories according to Kawaki's wishes, and he tells Shikamaru that it doesn't matter that he knows the truth now. Omnipotence will eventually suppress his mind to the truth, and this isn't the first time Shikamaru's been made aware of the truth, which we as the readers, we know that that is a sad reality. Sarda told us 2 chapters ago that they literally passed out photos of baby Boruto being held by Naruto, and people were still affected by omnipotence going, yeah, that's weird, but Kawaki is still Naruto's son. I don't know what this is, but that ain't Naruto's kid right there. In chapter 1, even though people saw that Kawaki was a car cyborg with a model's nanotech inside of him, and he had Ishiki's coma seal, something that never should have happened to Naruto's son, they said, well, that's weird, but Kawaki's Naruto's son. Omnipotence will always suppress the doubts that they have about reality unless they are actively behaving with that knowledge, knowing that this is a false reality, as we see with Amato and as we saw with Sasuke. But even then, as we see with the latter, before he got turned into a tree, saying that a full year after being told the truth, he still didn't know who Boruto was, and that it didn't matter because Sasuke said he was choosing to help Boruto because of the pleas of his daughter Sarada. Sasuke didn't train Boruto because he said, oh wow, my memory's gotten changed. You're really Naruto's son. He specifically says, man, you got those same blue eyes as that guy who saved me from the darkness. The Omnipotence still told him in his mind that Kawaki was his student, that Kawaki was still Naruto's son, but it was because his gut feeling, not his memories, his gut feeling told him that something was wrong about the whole situation, that in spite of this, he was ignoring it. And because his daughter was so certain about who Boruto was, Sasuke was choosing to train Boruto, believe in Boruto and Sarada, that they were the key to solving the whole omnipotence issue. It's a day-by-day constant fight. To get personal for a second, it's like what my uncle told me about his addiction to cocaine and heroin. You can break the addiction, but it never truly leaves you. And it's a day-by-day fight to suppress the urge, and sadly for him, before he passed away 4 years ago, he relapsed. My own father had a similar addiction. Boruto tells Shikamaru that even knowing the truth, he's in danger of omnipotence, forcing him to accept the memories that are telling him Boruto is an outsider. Kawaki is Naruto's child. However, what isn't a byproduct of the omnipotence is the belief that Boruto killed Naruto and Hinata. That had nothing to do with omnipotence, and Boruto makes that clear. Kawaki distorted the truth, and Boruto tells Shikamaru that he needs to trust in Boruto on that one aspect because things cannot be turned back to normal. Shikamaru and everyone else's memories, they're going to stay altered. But at least now Shikamaru knows the truth about Naruto and Hinata, something omnipotence has no bearing on. But Boruto states it's irrelevant because even if they found a way to reverse everything, his beef with Kawaki, it still remains. It's here that we see Boruto's truly Naruto's son. He explains to Shikamaru he understands why Kawaki did what he did by sealing away Naruto, and that Kawaki believed he was doing the right thing. But Shikamaru says like, hey fam, if that would have been me, I'd have saved Naruto and then I'd have killed Kawaki, which is something that is a human reaction most of us would have. Like, I would not forgive Kawaki. It'd be on sight if I seen this dude. But Boruto is taking the path that his father did with Sasuke and Obito and Nagato. He's seeking to understand and isn't blindly throwing hands. Upon hearing this, Shikamaru does something that will give Naruto fans everywhere a bit of deja vu. Shikamaru basically plays the heroes into Boruto's Itachi. He says that in order to prevent chaos with the public by them finding out the truth, Boruto will have to play the villain role. Boruto will be hunted down under the pretense of something that he is innocent of having done, all while the public is ignorant of the truth, and him protecting the village from the shadows, just as Itachi protected the village from afar, all while being hunted down. Boruto, he accepts that fate, knowing that he's now the Shadow Hokage for the village, a role that he's always wanted, but under different circumstances. It's then that we shift over to another bone-chilling reveal. Jura hasn't just been sitting around doing nothing. He's actually been reading the history of the Naruto world, reading a ton of books, particularly even the book that Jiraiya wrote that inspired Naruto's namesake. And he reveals more information that he requires, the more questions that he gets. This is important because what we're seeing here is the continued answer to the question that every author writes into their story, which is, what does it mean to be human? And what is the author trying to say about the human experience? We open up the chapter with a clone of Orochimaru seeking answers about the doubts in his heart and his memories, and we end off the chapter with an evolved Shinju clone of the Ten Tails that was made from Code's chakra and the chakra of another, seeking more answers about the world that they were born into, and asking the questions as to if reading the history of the world will allow him to find Naruto, to find Naruto's location, and the unspoken answer to the question of why it's in its nature to want to consume Naruto so badly. This is a really good way to end off the chapter because it's the story showing us that Jura is evolving and progressing through the stages of humanity, and it's continuing to separate himself from just being like the Ten Tails, a being that follows its instincts to devour. Jura is seeking answers to questions, all while seeking the answers is continuing to ask more questions in the process. What does it mean to be human? And what is it about Naruto that has him attracted to the strongest human we've had in the history of the Naruto world, which will likely seem like a bold statement to you, and if it does, you can see why I say so by clicking on this video you see on the screen.